All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Bills Guys. Unfortunately, it appears that we will not be able to read any of your comments tonight. Unfortunately, it does not appear that comments are showing up in the comment section of our end. So it seems like we're just going to be doing a regular old podcast in video form tonight, David. Is that what it's appearing from the surface here?
That sounds like what is going to happen. So what I'm going to try to do here is I'm going to try to monitor on YouTube if we're going to see these comments. Anything I can try to do, I might just try to pull that in to our conversation so I can see some people coming in. Steven's in the house, Stacy's in the house, Brian's in the house. I can see them commenting on YouTube. So Sam's in there, Elliot's in there, F the Jets are in there. So people are in. I'm seeing the comments on YouTube. So I'm going to do my best to help Steve out here tonight and just bring in your comments through voice that you're saying that you're
the old-fashioned way. We're going to be doing it the old-fashioned way tonight, guys.
Yeah, Daniel's in the house. Joe from the Hump Day Hotline is in the house. So we've got people in the house. So thank you, everyone. We are going to incorporate your comments. Don't worry. We will incorporate the comments, and we just might not be able to show them on the screen tonight, but we will shout you out and incorporate the comments. Jake's in the house as well. So welcome, everyone.
This is, we are kicking it old school tonight. This is my fault for displaying all these fancy new banners and wanting to show them off. I've cursed it. Just like Mother Nature has cursed the return of sports, because on the background right here, I have Yankees Nationals, first live sporting event other than golf and NASCAR and Lord knows how long, and it's pouring rain in the Bronx, so there is no baseball on TV right now. So my full focus, I guess, is going to be on this vidcast, and let's start with some Buffalo Bills news. And what we're going to start with today is Ed Oliver. Now, the main focus for our show today is going to be Josh Allen and ranking young quarterbacks. But we want to get started with the Ed Oliver news and give our takes on this Ed Oliver news. First of all, the report came out yesterday. It is all charges against Ed Oliver are going to be dropped. His blood alcohol levels came back. He tested 0.0. There was literally no alcohol in his system, which means the weapons charge was also dismissed because it was a legally registered firearm. And in the state of Texas, it's only a crime to have a weapon on you if you're committing another crime, as long as that weapon is legally registered. And last but not least, the one thing that's left that could still get Ed Oliver in trouble with the NFL is two things. One is he admitted to having taken Adderall, which is, if you don't have a prescription, a banned substance in the National Football League. But the phrasing in which Ed Oliver made his commentary makes it sound like he has a prescription. He didn't say, I took some Adderall and then hopped in my car. He said, I'm taking Adderall, which makes it sound like he does, in fact, have a legal prescription to have Adderall. The only other thing that could get him in trouble was the fact that he had a beer can between his two legs. But, I mean, if you look at it, the fact that somebody called him in and reported him with really no clear proof because, he wasn't drinking. The fact that by the time he was asked to leave his car and do his sobriety test, there was about 10 officers surrounding him. There's a lot of drama surrounding the arrest of Ed Oliver. Ed Oliver's rightfully putting up a stink about it. If I'm the NFL, I think it's best for them, despite the fact that they have punished players before who have pled out or their cases have been dismissed, despite the fact that they have punished them.
We got comments.
Despite the fact that they have done so in the past, I think that it would be best for the National Football League just to forget about it.
Oh yeah, with everything going on right now and them trying to sort of meet the players as much as they can on some of these social justice issues. You saw that they are going to allow the players to wear designs on their cleats and things like that nature. I would, if I was the NFL and if you're Roger Goodell, you need to just let this one go. To be honest with you, like these things that they've punished players for in the past where, maybe charges have been dismissed or what have you. The player, there was still instances of this in the past, maybe where like the player maybe was in the wrong, but didn't get charged with anything. In this situation, Ed Oliver was clearly not in the wrong in any way. So I think the NFL absolutely needs to let this one go and just it would be interesting to see if they acknowledge it in any way, without like obviously putting any kind of discipline on them. But it would be interesting to see if they acknowledge it anyway in the construct of sort of the social situations that are happening today. So that is going to be interesting. And we got our first super chat of the night from Joe. So what I think is happening here tonight is the comments in our app are a little bit delayed, but I'm getting them. We are getting them through. So I am going to still try to work in as live as possible, so that we don't get too far behind. But we'll make sure we get the super chats up here as they come in the broadcast, and we'll get those going.
Here's an example now, Matthew.
And this is a good point also with the beer can thing. Elliot said it was a spit can. It was not a beer can. Yeah.
And another great comment from Matthew Ronkowski. He says Goodell is no longer passing out the punishment. So Goodell is no longer the person in charge of doling out. He's no longer the punishment czar of the National Football League. It works its way through a process. And my guess is a lot of the people that are working through that process, it's going to probably I don't think we're going to see it Oliver punished at all.
Nope. No, we shouldn't.
All right, yeah. So it appears we're about 10 minutes behind on the comments because I'm getting comments from about 6:05 right now. So that's something, unfortunately, we're going to have to work through today as we hop into our first main topic for today. So we got that all of our news out of the way. And what we want to do today on this show, that mulligan. Can you see it?
Yeah, it's knocking me in the face through the microphone.
But so. The first thing we want to talk about, and the focus of today's show is going to be this. We want to rank Josh Allen amongst all of the younger quarterbacks.
Sure. I'll take some barbecue sauce, please. Thanks. All
right. Take some. Wow, now I'm just
sorry.
Sorry. I'm just thinking about nuggets.
That's my fault. That's my fault. We're gonna tie this back to nuggets eventually. I promise you.
Is that okay that I'm a ranch guy with my nuggets?
Yeah, I think that's fine, right?
Is that acceptable? It's okay to be a ranch guy with my nuggets, that buttermilk ranch with some nugs. But anyway, back to the focus of our show today. We want to have a conversation ranking Josh Allen amongst the younger quarterbacks in the National Football League. Not ranking him amongst all the quarterbacks, but against the younger quarterbacks. And I sort of posed this question on Twitter today, and we're going to roll with that mantra today. And the question I posed on Twitter today was this. I've actually posted a couple of questions. This was the second question I posted after my original tweet was absolutely bombarded with hate tweets. And this is the tweet that I posted. Why does liking other quarterbacks more than Josh Allen automatically mean that you hate Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills? Can't you like other quarterbacks more than Josh Allen, but still have respect for the ceiling that Josh Allen has, for his leadership ability, for his production thus far, while still retaining your Bills Mafia membership, your Bills Mafia ID badge? Just because there's like one or two quarterbacks that I like more than Josh Allen doesn't mean I'm not a Bills fan. Doesn't mean I'm not a Josh Allen fan. Doesn't mean I hate anyone. It just means that today we're going to have an honest conversation about ranking today's young NFL quarterbacks. I want you guys to be a part of this conversation as well, as best as we can be on this like 10 or so minute delay here. And Josh isn't going to be near the top of either of our lists. He comes in around the 10 range in both of our lists of the young quarterbacks in the National Football League. And that's okay, because as Josh Allen's career progresses, things change. This is a fluid conversation, one that we can go back to every offseason. But we're talking about the 2020 offseason. Josh Allen hasn't played with Stephon Diggs or Zach Moss or behind a second-year offensive line yet.
Welcome, John. New member.
Welcome, John. So this conversation comes, we're all projecting Josh Allen to have a big year. I'm confident Josh Allen's going to have a big year. But we're making this projection before that actually happens. So here is the scenario we're going to throw out here today that we're going to have a conversation about. We're going to list all the quarterbacks that we would rather have over the next 10 years than Josh Allen. And when you say 10 years, that's what brings the younger quarterbacks into the equation. No one's going to pick Tom Brady here. No one's going to pick Aaron Rodgers here. Why? Because they're 30-plus years old. By the time 10 years is up, those guys are going to be in their mid-40s. Tom Brady be pushing 50. He'd be over 50. So those guys are out of the equation. Drew Brees is out of the equation. Ben Roethlisberger is out of the equation. So now it's Josh Allen, and for the most part, his peers, guys who were drafted in the 2 or 3 years surrounding his draft. Because we can dip into the college ranks here, because there are some pretty promising quarterbacks in the college ranks. I know you don't have any college quarterbacks on your list, but anyone who's been on Twitter today has seen my list, and there's some college quarterbacks on it. So let's have the conversation. Let's start the conversation. Quarterbacks you'd rather have over the next 10 years than Josh Allen. And again, Dave, we're going to go through my tiers, and you're going to sort of critique my tiers because I know we have the same 8 names. And people in the comments section can sort of rank where we have them tiered. My first tier 1 is, I think, the no-brainers. The guys that there's really no debate you can have. And I have 2 names in this list. One is Deshaun Watson, and the other is Patrick Mahomes. Do you think that those 2 belong in tier 1, guys where we can't even debate it?
No, I do agree with you. And I think, like, to answer John's question here, he's not Mahomes, but how are we defining this sort of young NFL QB? There are going to be a couple exceptions in this list, but I think when we talk about, like, a guy that you want to lead your franchise over the 10 years, you're talking about a guy that you want to be either on the ascent or in his prime for the next 10 years, and not someone who's either on the downside or you think that will lose physical ability over the next 10 years. So guys like, Drew Brees, Tom Brady, like you said, are not going to be in this. Probably guys even in their low 30s are not going to be on this list, because the Tom Bradys and Drew Breeses that play well into their 40s are really the exception to the rule here. So we're talking guys probably, like you said, drafted recently with a few exceptions. So getting back to your question, Watson and Mahomes, to me, that's a clear tier 1. I actually think, for me personally, I would actually add a guy to my tier 1 that would be an exception, and that would be Russell Wilson. He's older. He's 31. But I think Russell's a guy that, if he seems to me like a guy who could be the exception to play till he's 40. Now, the one thing you worry about with Russell is that he does so much with his legs, and what's he going to do for you at 40? So for me, it's Mahomes and Watson as the clear tier 1, and I'm just going to slide Wilson in there as like a 1B.
Now,
and just for the comment, for the viewers in the comments, I did not consider college quarterbacks in mine. I only considered NFL quarterbacks.
Yeah, the thing with Russ Wilson is Russ Wilson's on my list, despite the fact that he's 31 years old.
He's the only one on 30 on my list.
Yeah, he's the number 1 on tier 2, and that's the reason why I put him in tier 2. When we were having this conversation in our Buffalo Fanatics family chat today, and I want to take a quick pause to say how much I respect every single one of the Buffalo Fanatics contributors, because that group chat is absolute fire. Like, sometimes I wish we could screenshot and share some of the conversations that we have, because it's making every single one of us better as contributors.
I get FOMO, man. I get FOMO. I go to sleep and there's a conversation that blows up, and I try to catch up in the morning, and I'm like, oh damn, I missed out on a great conversation. But it's great in there.
As Jan Gailey says, iron sharpens iron. Joshua Barrett coming in with a $2 super chat saying, sorry guys, I'm late. He's busy packing. So that's okay, Josh. Oh, hey, you have it. I'm still 10 minutes behind. So I was just about to say, apologies for not displaying it, but some of us are 10 minutes behind in the comment section.
No, I think
others of us are not.
I think we're caught up, actually. Joe gave us. Oh, you're not? Okay, I'm caught up. Polarish, we're talking about Russell really quick. You said 31 is old. I think for QB standard in this conversation, he's an outlier, right? He's an outlier for a 10-year horizon. So yes.
So here's what I'm going to say about Russell Wilson, and the reason why I have him in tier 2. It's because age is going to be a factor when you're talking about 10 years. By the end of this 10 years, Russell Wilson is 41 years old. But Russell Wilson has come out publicly and said, I want to play till I'm 45. And if there's any quarterback in the National Football League right now in his semi-youth, 31 years old, Russell Wilson, I buy him as sort of the next Tom Brady. I really think he's a guy who could play into his 40s. I think he's got that kind of touch on his passes. I think that even when maybe his legs start to leave him a little bit, he's still going to be shifty enough to at least maneuver around the pocket and be a really good quarterback. Like the touch he puts on passes, that stuff ages really well. Like that'll age like a fine wine when you could put touch like that on your passes. Mm-hmm. So I think that I'm going to put. I feel pretty confident. I'm happy putting him in my tier 1, 2. The only reason I had him in tier 2 is because of that age factor.
Exactly. So he's like a 1B. So I think we're in agreement there.
All right. The other names I had in tier 2, and we could take these one at a time because all of them are going to be controversial. Number 1 is Lamar Jackson. Now, here's what I'll say about Lamar and the reason why I have him ahead of Josh Allen. Because I've seen a couple of people in the comment section saying it's Patrick Mahomes and that's it. Well, here's what I'm going to say about Lamar Jackson. Number 1, Lamar Jackson's production since being drafted is light years ahead of Josh Allen. Mm-hmm. Lamar Jackson won the freaking MVP of the National Football League.
Yep. Jackson, you cannot discount that. You cannot discount that.
Jackson and Allen are similar in the fact that neither of them have sort of hit their peak as passers. They are flawed throwers of the football. They each have their own different flaws. We saw Lamar get a little bit exposed in the playoffs last year, throwing to the sidelines. We see Josh Allen's issue, chucking the ball too hard underneath and throwing the deep ball. Each of them are flawed as passers, but guess what? As good of a runner as Josh Allen is, Lamar Jackson is next level running the football. Now, you could make the argument that 10 years, you think that Lamar Jackson doesn't have the frame to hold up like a Josh Allen. Mm-hmm. But right now, I'm taking the production of Lamar Jackson. I'm taking the fact that even if his passing isn't 100%, he still has a knack for making bigger plays and scoring more touchdowns than Josh Allen. He's still more effective with his legs. Despite the fact that you can have your longevity issues, I'm not going to play the hypotheticals here. I'm going to put Lamar Jackson steadfastly above Josh Allen on my ranking.
Yeah, he's above him for now, right? And this is like kind of my thought process behind this is like you're trying to take into account what you've seen on the field production-wise and also somewhat project into the future. So while I do think maybe from a passing standpoint, Josh Allen may have the chance to develop into a better passer, we don't know what Lamar Jackson's going to develop into as a passer yet either, to be perfectly fair to Lamar. And yes, although Josh Allen did have more rushing touchdowns than Lamar Jackson last year, Lamar Jackson was the league MVP and led his team to a division title, and they were one of the best teams in football last year. So I totally get the point on the rushing TDs, but again, I mean, Josh had a couple of those from the 1 yard line. Like, I'm not trying to take away from Josh, but like Lamar Jackson is just a freak right now.
Lamar Jackson, Sean Munley says, but Josh has more touchdowns than Lamar, running touchdowns than Lamar. Yeah, but Lamar threw so many touchdowns that it didn't matter. He still had 10, 11 touchdowns more than Josh Allen. He didn't have to run for all those touchdowns because he was throwing for him.
Yeah.
And that's the crux of the issue with Josh Allen as we get into some of these other quarterbacks that we're going to talk about, because Wentz and Prescott are next on this list. My issue right now, Carson Wentz, Dak Prescott, there are the pros and the cons for either of those quarterbacks, and we're going to talk about them. But one of the reasons why I have them higher than Josh Allen is because they score more points than Josh Allen. Their touchdown production through the air is far superior to that of Josh Allen. And in the case of Carson Wentz last year, he threw 27 touchdowns to Josh Allen's 20, albeit minus one game. He threw 7 more touchdowns with XFL quality receivers. Philadelphia was down to nothing at the end of the year. So we could say, oh, Josh doesn't have the weapons. That's why he only threw 20 touchdowns. Well, same with Carson, and he threw 7 more. So my argument for Wentz, despite the injuries, my argument for Dak, you could say what you want about Dak, is the fact that these guys are producing more yards and more touchdowns than Josh Allen currently. They've shown me they can do it. I think Josh Allen will do it this year, but until he does it, I'm willing to put these two guys with a track record of doing it over multiple seasons who are still relatively young ahead of Josh Allen.
I mean, you look at what Philadelphia's wide receiving core looked like last year. It was absolute trash, right? It was worse than the Bills. I mean, they had Greg Ward and Nelson Aguilar was dropping balls like left and right. Like Alshon Jeffrey was barely in they didn't have anybody, right? I mean, their best receivers were Dallas Goedert and Zach Ertz, right? The 2 tight ends. So you got to give Carson Wentz some credit here. I mean, obviously we go back and look at that Mark Sanchez interview. There's a lot of people that want to compare Josh Allen to Wentz from the fact that he came out of a small school and kind of is built similar to Wentz. We always kind of compare Josh to Cam Newton, but like there is some comparisons that are probably being made to him to Carson Wentz as well. And Wentz has had a little bit of bad luck on the injury front. We'll see if that actually truly manifests itself as bad luck or if he's truly injury prone. But Wentz is a guy that when he's on, he's one of the best. And with that receiving core he had last year, that was pretty impressive what he did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, Joe in the comment section, Lamar had 16 more passing touchdowns than Josh. I didn't realize it was that high because I didn't have the stats in front of me. That's a lot of touchdowns, guys. I don't care what offensive system you're in and who the playmakers are around you. Like, they each have their own.
Here's a good comment from Elliot. Jackson's greater than Allen right now, but we've pretty much seen his ceiling. Probably. I mean, we don't know. Like I was saying, we don't know. We're saying the same things about Josh Allen. Like, can he develop as a passer? We think he'll develop into a better passer, but Lamar could too. We don't know. We think Allen is going to be a better passer and maybe will be, but we just don't know.
John Banks has a comment. Do you want a scrambling quarterback at 41 years old? I believe since he said 41 years old, that's in reference to
Russell, I think.
To Russell Wilson. I'm sorry, but Russell Wilson's got some touch on. Like I said, the way he plays, throwing the ball ages like a fine wine. Like he puts some really good touch on his passes, some underrated touch from. I shouldn't even say underrated. He has one of the better touch passes in the league, Russell Wilson. That stuff ages really well, and that's why I think he can have a Tom Brady like career into his 40s. Daniel Gowry's coming in with Dak is not the leader that Josh is. And not as much heart. Josh was better QB head-to-head on Thanksgiving. I would not take Dak over Josh. Those are some arguments you can make, and I'm not discounting these arguments. But one of my hotter takes in our group chat today was the fact that I think Dak Prescott is actually being held back in Dallas. Somebody made the comment like, "Oh, is it Kellen Moore's system that makes him blow up his stats? Like you see a college quarterback stats blown up." I think Dak's stats are inflated, and they're inflated because Kellen Moore and Jason Garrett, whoever was in charge running that Dallas offense for the past 3-4 years, you have Ezekiel Elliott, you're throwing the ball a million times. And you have a really good offensive line, and you're throwing the ball a million times. If they had an offensive coordinator who understood how to flow an offense, and we have the same issues with Brian Dable, and how to blend the run with the pass and not be over-reliant on passing the ball and working the clock more and giving your defense more rest and sustaining longer drives and possessions, I honestly think the Dallas Cowboys with Dak Prescott, they'd be winning 11, 12 games every year instead of 7, 8, 9, and we wouldn't even be having this conversation. Dak Prescott would be in tier 1. He's one of the guys in the National Football League who I really do believe coaching is holding him back. I think that Dak Prescott is being held back in Dallas, Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay. I think Russell Wilson, to an extent, in Seattle is being held back by offensive coaching. So to me, that's my argument with Dak is the dude can throw for a ton of yards, and he's not afraid to throw the ball in the end zone, and he scores points. And that's my biggest issue with Josh Allen right now is the lack of throwing touchdowns. I need to see him pass upwards of 30 touchdowns this year for me to elevate him over some of these guys next offseason.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a few comments about Dak's sort of leadership and that, but like, I mean, from what I've seen, it seems like Dak actually is a pretty good leader. Like, I don't really have any issues with Dak on the field as a leader. I mean, getting back to, I told you I would bring this back to Nuggets. We all remember that famous line he said in the huddle where he said, "Spicy Nuggets are back," and it's just like, it kind of reminded me a little bit. Like, I'm not comparing him, so please don't say this, but like that'd be something like that, like Joe Montana said when he come into the huddle, right? Like he wouldn't even like talk about the game. He talked about something random, and I'm not saying he is. I'm just saying like it's nice to see like a kind of cool, calm customer in the huddle there. And like you said, Dak puts up points. I mean, Dak to me, he's not as far ahead of Allen as maybe like some people will put him, and some people obviously will put Allen ahead of Dak. But to me, I think he's just slightly ahead based on what he's done so far. But I think Allen could surpass him. But Dak has been pretty good, right? I mean, he's been pretty good. He's had to deal with, Jason Garrett as his coach for most of his time so far, and we're going to see how that plays out this year with McCarthy. Is he going to mesh well with McCarthy? We know that Rodgers didn't near the end, so we'll see if that helps him. But like at the end of the day, McCarthy took that team to how many division titles? Took him to the Super Bowl. Dak's got a good physical skill set, and he's on a good team. So I mean, I don't think you can argue too much there.
All right, let's head into tier 3 now. And this is where I think the debate can really start to heat up because there are going to be some names here. I'm about to piss a lot of people off. I'm about to make some people so angry. Make sure you hit the like button now because you're not going to want to hit the like button in about 10 minutes. But let's start with the 2 at the top of my tier 3. These are some guys who are in the National Football League. They're both on your list. I believe they're the final 2 on your list, and that's Kyler Murray and Joe Burrow. I would rather have Kyler Murray and Joe Burrow right now than Josh Allen over the next 10 years. And here is my reasoning behind that. I think that sometimes we look at coaching. Kyler Murray's got Cliff Kingsbury, who runs a very West Coastian / air raid offense where you see Kyler Murray checking down the football a lot. Joe Burrow is about to go to Cincinnati, where he's got Zach Taylor, who was, I believe, the ball boy in Los Angeles for Sean McVay as his head coach, and he's behind a very shoddy offensive line. So these are two quarterbacks who were first overall picks for a reason. They have very high pedigree, and they produced at big-time programs against big-time competition in college. I just think they're better as passers of the football right now than Josh Allen. Kyler Murray is an equal runner, or equal if not better runner. I mean, obviously there's a difference in the way they run. He's a smaller guy with some speed. Josh Allen's more of a bulkier runner. But these are two guys where I think if you instilled them, if you're looking at this realistically, you take the glasses off. And if Kyler Murray was the Buffalo Bills pick at 7th overall, if Kyler Murray was the Bills pick at 7th overall 2 years ago, or Joe Burrow was the number 7 overall pick for the Buffalo Bills 2 years ago, and Josh Allen was the number 1 pick one of these last 2 years and playing in Arizona or playing in Cincinnati, would we still have Josh Allen ranked above Kyler and Joe Burrow? Like the way these two throw it down the field, which is something we haven't seen from Josh Allen, those deep passes, the ones that get you chunk plays and score you points. We haven't seen it from Josh Allen yet. You have seen it in college from Joe Burrow, one of the nastiest deep balls I've ever seen. The touch he puts on the ball is unreal. And Kyler Murray has shown it throughout college and the pros that he can hit those deep balls. So no one getting blown up in the comment section, but that's just my take. I take the big-time college program pedigree guys, number 1 overall picks, above the guy who, again, I love Josh Allen, but he was such a big project coming out, and his development is great, how rapid it's been. I'm completely content with Josh Allen as my starting quarterback, but I would trade him in a heartbeat straight up for Joe Burrow or Kyler Murray.
Yeah, I mean, Kyler and Joe to me are like, they're right there with Josh as far as like long-term prospects over the next 10 years. Josh has had 2 years under his belt in the league, and Kyler's had 1. Joe hasn't done anything. So if I'm going to kind of put them in a group there, you probably take Josh first, but I could see the argument for taking Kyler. I mean, look, Kyler was the number 1 pick. He got sacked the 3rd most of anyone in the league last year behind Cardinals have always had issues with their offensive line, but now he's got Nuke there. He's got Larry for 1 last year. If the Cardinals actually address that offensive line, I mean, they have Kenyon Drake. So I feel like Kyler's in a position to where, from a individual's success standpoint, he could probably do pretty well. The thing you worry about with him is in that division. So it's like, when we're assessing these kind of comparisons, do we say, oh, if we put Kyler Murray on the Bills, would you take him over Josh Allen? Or do you say, would you take Kyler Murray on the Cardinals and the team he's on now over Josh Allen? I think that's where things get a little murky, right? So for me, it's like, to me, Joe Burrow is kind of right outside the fringe there, because like, it's just hard for me to put guys. It's hard for me to put guys that haven't played yet above a guy who has played. And that's where we're going to get into this sort of like thing where I've kind of put like Burrow and Tua and Kyler kind of in this grouping with Josh, where Josh is probably like right above them right now, but he's still so young in his career that you don't know what's going to happen 10 years from now with these 4 guys. We could be talking about how Joe Burrow was like the savior for the Bengals, 6-7 years from now. We could talk about Kyler Murray being the MVP in a year or 2 on a trajectory like Lamar Jackson had. Kyler Murray could be the next Russell Wilson. He's got that same type of stature. He can throw a good deep ball. He's not the tallest guy. Like, we don't know, right? So this is where it gets really murky, and it's where this is where personal preference comes into play, right? I mean, I don't think there's really a wrong answer here. So
I mean, Daniel says, so glad judging up the Bills GM. I mean, here's what I will say, Daniel. Here's what I will say. And I have witnesses. So I didn't have a podcast. I didn't have a show. I don't even think I had a Twitter handle back during the Andrew Luck draft. But I was sitting, me and my buddies love the NFL draft. Obviously, anyone who watched our draft coverage this year saw me on the draft, knows that I'm completely 100% invested in the NFL draft. It's one of my favorite things to do in the offseason is scout draft prospects. My number 2 QB that year behind Andrew Luck was Russell Wilson. I had a top 15 grade on Russell Wilson coming out of college. And I have witnesses. I'll bring Mr. Fabili onto the show. and he will tell you that I had Russell Wilson number 2 above Robert Griffin with a bullet. So maybe you want to take back that comment, Daniel. Maybe we'd have Russell Wilson right now as our quarterback if I was the GM of the Buffalo Bills. But anyway, we got a couple of comments. The one from Sean Munley. Sorry, Sean. We go way back because you were here back during our Twitter shows and our Periscope shows. And I love your takes. But Drew Lock is better than Burrow and Murray right now?
He could be he could be better than Burrow. We don't know, but he's not better than Murray.
I'm sorry. He's not. Like,
No,
Burrow,
no.
I'll have that conversation. But Kyler, no, we can't have that conversation.
No, he's not better than Kyler. He's not. But I just think it's hard to say a guy who hasn't played yet is better than a guy who's played a year. Like, all it's going to take is Burrow to have a good season this year, and we're going to say he's better than Drew Lock, but we can't say it yet. That's what I'll say.
Who was this? Josh says there would be billboards to fire him if he was. First of all, good luck fitting this giant head on a billboard.
Yeah,
Second of all,
it's not fitting.
you couldn't fit the hair in it. It would just look like this. You wouldn't be able to fit my hair into the billboard. But second of all, you're telling me right now if the Buffalo Bills trade Josh Allen straight for Kyler Murray, you'd be upset? Like, I mean, if anything, it's a wash. Like,
People will be upset because of the emotional attachment they've grown to have on Josh Allen,
and that's understandable.
Yeah.
So now here's what I am going to say: just because I like Kyler Murray and Joe Burrow better doesn't mean I hate Josh Allen. I love his ceiling. I think the fact that he has gone from as raw of a prospect playing practically high school football in college at Wyoming to what he has become in such a short period of time is absolutely astounding. Don't get me wrong.
Let's start a GoFundMe for that billboard,
Hey,
Daniel.
By all means. Hey, what clout is clout, whether it's, publicity is publicity. Good publicity, bad publicity.
I do think Drew Lock kind of gets shit on a little bit because he quietly did pretty well at the end of last year, but we don't need to get into that. I wouldn't take him over Josh Allen right now for the next 10 years.
Not even close.
But he is a decent prospect, and who knows, he could end up turning out better than Joe Burrow. We don't know. But I do like the comment that let me go back up and find it. I think Elliot made it. Yeah, this is what I was saying earlier. Murray's intriguing, could be a young Russell Wilson. I agree. And then there was another comment that someone said that Polarish, only reason Murray isn't as hyped is because he's playing in Arizona, and you live in Arizona. So what is the hype around Kyler Murray right now in Arizona? It's got to be sky high, right?
The way that the Bills Mafia supports and is willing to ride or die with Josh Allen, you could tell sort of the heat I'm getting on this show for saying I like Kyler more. The ride or die feeling that exists within Bills Mafia exists in Cardinals Mafia. Like, he is the real deal. They think of him as a potential top 5, top 3 starting quarterback in the National Football League. Expectations going in with Hopkins and Fitzgerald and Christian DeKirk and all the weapons they have, Kenny and Drake, is absolutely sky high. They've added a lot of weapons to the defense. Vance Joseph is still their defensive coordinator. He sucks. They're still going to give up a ton of points because of that, but at least they'll be not embarrassing with the weapons they've had on defense. The expectations are sky high in Atlanta or in Arizona. Sucks that they have to play in division with Seattle and Los Angeles and San Francisco. But that being said, the way Bills Mafia feels about Josh Allen, the Arizona Cardinals fans feel about Kyler Murray. The only difference is there is no Arizona Cardinal fan outside of the state of Arizona, and there are 1/10 of the number of Cardinals fans compared to the number of Bills fans, maybe 1/100th. So the voices aren't as loud on social media. If we had a Cardinals podcast, Dave, we'd be doing this right now to our parents. That's who would be watching. Hey,
I know a Cardinals fan that lives in North Carolina. He's one of my best friends. So there you go. There's one.
So it's you guys are acting like I am. You guys are acting I'm seeing UFOs by thinking that 2 number 1 overall picks in the National Football League over the last 2 seasons. How dare I say that I like them slightly more than Josh Allen? How dare I? I'm about to have an aneurysm or a seizure right here on live television.
Joe wants to know who hurt you when you were little.
That's what I'm saying.
And he wanted to know so badly that he super chatted it. So thanks, Joe. Appreciate that. Yeah, look, I mean, we don't know. This is the great thing about these conversations, right? Like somebody like Koala Bear saying Murray might be a Vince Young, who knows, right? Like Vince Young took the Titans to his playoffs, Titans to the playoffs. I don't know if it was his rookie season or the season after, but it's like, yeah, like these guys could be flash in the pans. We don't know, right? But Vince Young was not a good passer. Murray is a better passing prospect than Vince Young probably ever was. So we'll see. But I like the conversation that this stirs up because there's so many.
I'm gonna take Koala Bear Khan's $1 super chat as a stamp of approval for my opinions today.
Okay. Well, I like that. Okay. He figured it out, man. He figured he know what? Pierre probably
didn't I do an entire show with Patrick Moran and Joe Marino saying that there's a possibility that if everything goes right, Josh Allen could score 40 touchdowns this year. I have complete confidence in Josh Allen. I would be more confident in Kyler Murray or Joe Burrow to score 40 touchdowns, but still.
Pierre thinks you've been talking to Kevin a little bit too much lately. For those of you who don't know,
Tua's not on my list.
I know, but Tua's not on the list. But I mean, Kevin's a big Josh Allen. This is how it goes in the Buffalo Fanatics chat. There's all the Bills fans, and then there's Kevin, and then so you got like Anthony and Steve and Pierre. They're all like Josh Allen's all the way over here. He's going to be an MVP. Blah blah blah. And then there's like Kevin who's on this side who says like Josh Allen stinks. And then like I'm here in the middle, but I don't say anything because it's too entertaining to watch both of those sides go at it. So, yeah.
All right, Josh, I'm about to make you real salty here. Remember, this scenario was the next 10 years. The next 10 years, which means up to the 2030 season. And there are some quarterbacks in college football right now that are amazing. Like Trevor Lawrence is going to get that Andrew Luck type hype. I think that Justin Fields is going to get that sort of Killian, we appreciate the super chat here as well. I think that Justin Fields is going to get some Cam Newton type of love from the NFL draft community. A little bit different of a player. There's a couple other guys who were freshmen last year in Kedon Slovis at USC and Sam Howell at the University of North Carolina, who somebody please go YouTube Kedon Slovis, go YouTube Sam Howell. Your jaw will drop seeing these 19-year-old kids throw a football in the Pac-12 and the ACC. It's absolutely insane. So I have those four quarterbacks, Trevor Lawrence, Fields, Kedon Slovis, and Sam Howell, all above Josh Allen, because I really do believe that those four guys are going to be legitimate NFL quarterbacks. And it's 10 years we're talking about here. 10 years. And that's just, I'm sorry, that's just where I'm going with it.
Well, so I want to talk about Daniel's comment really quick because like this is one of the theoreticals that we were talking about, right? It's like, you know, are we talking about Josh Allen? Are we talking about replacing Josh Allen with these guys on the Bills? Are we talking about them on their teams right now? I think it's like you can make whatever argument you want. You could say like, okay, bring like Joe Burrow into the Bills and would he do better than Josh Allen? Or are you going to say, is Joe Burrow going to do better with the Bengals than Josh Allen with the Bills? Like, so those conversations are all fun conversations to have. Cordero, super chat here. Thank you so much. $10. What's up, brothers? Hope you and your family are doing great. Would you feel the same way about Josh Allen if we had a different offensive coordinator? Look, I think Steve and I both have Josh Allen as like a top 10 QB. Like we would have him as a top 10 QB over the next 10 years, which I think, to be fair, is like pretty high praise right now. Like I'm being perfectly honest. Like there are not double digit QBs. Number of QBs we would take over Josh Allen for the next 10 years, which I think is very high praise considering that he's only played for 2 years. And yes, we made it to the playoffs last year, but there's still a long way to go for him. The ceiling's high. We all agree. And that's why we're ranking him as high as we did. But statistically, he wasn't even a top 20 quarterback from a, passing yard, whatever you want to say. So we expect good things out of him. I don't think it changes my mind at all based on the offensive coordinator, to answer Cordero's question. I think that, we've been big, we've had our moments where we've been kind of hating on Dayball, but like for me, I'm trying to like think about this as Josh Allen on this team and this fit. I don't think it would make a difference to me.
Josh says, "You sure you checked Judge's list?" My list was 12 guys, but 4 of those guys were in college, so technically it's 10 or it's 8. So he's in the top 10 for now until those guys get drafted. But like I said, the thing about this argument is this is an argument we can legitimately have every offseason. Like when next offseason passes, like here's the thing. If next season goes by and Josh Allen comes out and throws for 32 touchdowns and runs for 7-8 touchdowns and throws for over 3,000 yards and the Bills win 10 games, dude, Patrick Mahomes, Russ Wilson, that list is going to shrink significantly. It's going to shrink significantly, but he just hasn't done it yet. And now I know I just got done saying Murray and Burrow are who I think are better than Josh Allen, but that's why they're tier 3. They're hypotheticals, whereas there isn't that production to compare it. Kyler Murray's played 1 season. Joe Burrow hasn't taken a snap. I just like them coming out of college more than I like Josh Allen coming out of college, even with what he's done. Now, Pierre has this comment, where will Josh Allen rank if he only fixes the deep ball? I would probably elevate him over Murray and Burrow, because I think that he would then create enough production to put himself above those 2. I still would then put him neck and neck with the Prescotts and Lamars, I'd probably put him over Lamar at that point if he fixes the deep ball, because I think that there's more longevity to his game. I would still think that I would still probably make an argument that Wentz is better unless Wentz magically collapses over an off season. I would still probably, make the argument that, Russ Wilson, Deshaun Watson, Patrick Mahomes were better. But if Josh Allen fixes the deep ball in 2020 and that accounts for 10 extra touchdowns and gets him over the 3,000 yard mark, I'd be willing to put him over half of the list that I just gave you.
Yeah. And I think that the thing with Lamar is like, what is he going to turn out to be? Is he going to turn out to be like a better version of Michael Vick, or is he going to turn out to be like a lesser version of Michael Vick? Is like Josh going to turn out to be like Cam Newton? Like, and then you kind of like maybe compare those guys, like Cam Newton in his prime or Michael Vick in his prime. Like, so it's like, it's tough, right? Because we don't know either of them what they're going to develop as passers, which is again why we put like guys like Mahomes and Watson at the top cream of the crop, right? Because they have the ability to run a little bit. Watson more so than Mahomes, but also with the passing. So if he fixes the deep ball, that's almost like the last kind of like major flaw, if you will, that he needs to kind of improve in his game, other than maybe some of the short like finesse passes. But like to me, if I had to choose, I'm taking the deep ball production over the short yardage. You're going to pull your hair out over some of those missed short throws, but if the deep ball's on, you're not gonna worry about
the big plays. Will be there to score the points. That's my biggest issue with Josh Allen right now. 20 passing touchdowns in 2020 National Football League. I don't care who his weapons were. I said earlier, Carson Wentz had CFL receivers last season and threw 27. Josh threw 20 with John Brown, Cole Beasley. He threw 20. So I need more touchdowns from Josh Allen. I need to see him get more aggressive, fix that deep ball, do what he's got to do to score more points. We averaged 19 points last season. I love Josh Allen's ceiling. I love it. I absolutely love it. I love the way he's progressing. I love the way in which I think he's going to progress. But more so with Josh Allen than Kyler Murray and Joe Burrow, I need to see it. Because I've seen what Kyler Murray can do against big competition in college. I've seen what Joe Burrow can do against big time competition in college. I've seen that aggressiveness out of them. I've seen those big time plays and big time moments. I haven't seen that yet from Josh Allen. What I've seen from Josh Allen is 19 points per game and 20 touchdowns as his ceiling so far in the National Football League. So while that's great, given where he came from, so far behind all these other prospects, there's less of me that's willing to give Josh Allen's projection the benefit of the doubt than there is for other quarterbacks because of that. But let's go to Koala Bear's comment real quick. I take Derek Carr for 4 years, for 10 years. I like him personally. I kind of like Derek Carr too, but not for 10 years and not as a franchise quarterback. To me, he's Tyrod Taylor. Like, he's a guy, he had the least yards. Josh Allen led the league in yards per attempt, right? And Derek Carr.
It was like it was like short yardage passing. It was like Derek
Yeah.
Carr. Like it was just like passes like 6 yards or less or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Passes like 6 yards or less. Derek Carr led the National Football League. The guy is a smart quarterback. He's a heady quarterback. I think that in the right situation, not Oakland, you can win games. But I would never want him as my franchise quarterback, and I never would even consider putting him on this. I'm not ignoring 5 comeback wins, Jake, who says in the comment section. He's the reason why we had to come back. We couldn't score enough points when our defense was that good. He's the reason we were behind. He was the reason we were behind. The reason why Josh Allen had to throw touchdowns in the fourth quarter against the Jets is because we couldn't score 20 points in the first 3.5 quarters. It's because he gave up 7, even though it wasn't really his fault, to Cole Beasley. The reason why he had to come back in the Bengals game is because we couldn't put him away, because we couldn't score points. The reason why we had to come back in the Giants game, we couldn't put him away. We couldn't score points. The reason why we had to come back in most of these games, Dolphins games, couldn't put him away, couldn't score points. I love Josh Allen, but I need to see it a little bit more. We could blame the go ahead, blame the offensive coordinator. Like, it's fine, but I don't know. This is why I prefaced this before we started this conversation. I love Josh Allen. I love his ceiling, but for us to just pretend like there are no other quarterbacks in the National Football League, that's a mistake. Patrick Mahomes is not the only quarterback under the age of 30 better than Josh Allen. He's not. He's not.
Yeah. And so Sean makes a comment here around like some of his flaws, right? Which we haven't really talked about some of these as much as maybe we should have, right? The internal clock, fumbling. He did fumble quite a bit on the hero ball, which we saw in that Pats game. But to me, these are things that like, these aren't really like passing issues, right? These aren't like issues like with mechanics or anything like this. This is just like decision making and the mental aspect more so than anything I see here, right? Fumbling, a lot of that has to do with like awareness of where you are on the field, not trying to like maybe take that extra yard. Like we saw what he tried to do in that Texans game with the lateral, right? Which was crazy. The awareness thing is a big one. I think that's something he definitely needs to get better at. I don't think he's great at sensing the pressure. He's good at stepping up and kind of getting out, but sometimes he kind of gets lost back there. So,
and to Jay Spence's comment here, Judge does not love Josh Allen, stop alignment. Here's the conundrum I find myself in. When I am talking about Josh Allen with Bills fans, I preface every conversation by saying I love his potential, but there are other quarterbacks I like more, and I get flamed for it. When I have conversations about Josh Allen with people who aren't Bills fans, they laugh at me and say I'm being too nice to Josh Allen. So I find myself in this really weird balance where I love a quarterback. I just happen to like 8 or 9 guys more than him. And people in the national media laugh at me for having him high, and people in Bills Mafia laugh at me for having him too low. So I knew exactly when we started this show what I was getting myself into. I knew that I was going to make some people angry tonight. I knew that there were people in the comment section going to be chirping at me and telling me I was taking it out. But I'm okay with it because I'm going to go to sleep tonight knowing full well that I'm living an honest life, free of any stress. What do they say? If you live a life of lies, you're going to get caught eventually. And if I sit here trying to lie and pretend like I love Josh Allen more than
you got some support
Carson
here.
Wentz.
You got some support here from Lucas. There's not anything wrong with letting Tyler and Burrow over Josh. Don't sweat it.
We need to go back to Joe's comment because I got the perfect answer for this one.
Okay.
Joe ain't gonna like it. Here, Joe, I'll tell you what. I'm going with Jay Spence. Here's why. Jay Spence lives like right down the road from me, so I get to see my grandchildren. All right, I could just drive over anytime if he lets me. If he lets me, of course. I don't want to sort of intervene in Jay Spence and my future daughter's life, but if he allows it, like I'll be like a 10-minute car ride for my grandchildren, Joe. And there's just not a price you can put on seeing your grandchildren.
Yeah, I can't answer this question because I don't want to make either one of them men. I feel like I'm like the least hated person on the show right now, so I don't want to like cause anyone to hate me right now.
All right, so there was actually a comment. If we go back to Cordero's comment, and a couple other people mentioned, well, what if you bring offensive coordinators into it, and I can't remember what it was, but either way, I want to get into a conversation about Josh
There
Allen
you go.
versus him.
There
Yeah,
you go.
thank you. I wanted to get into a conversation about Sam Darnold versus Josh Allen, because one of the reasons why I like Josh Allen more than Sam Darnold is because I think Josh Allen, despite the fact that he has his flaws that I think we can all admit that he has, he's not the greatest passer of the football right now. He's not. I think he brings more to the table than Sam Darnold. I think Sam Darnold is a way better passer of the football than Josh Allen. I don't think anyone's going to argue that. But Sam Darnold makes some bone-headed decisions on a regular basis, and he turns the ball over a lot, and he costs his team in some big moments. So if I want to plan out my team for the next 10 years, I would, one, want to take the fact that I know Josh Allen can make plays with his legs. I know that Josh Allen, even if he can't throw a receiver open, can hit a receiver if he is open, that there are things that he can do to score points. I'm willing to bet that Josh Allen can become a good enough passer, and the other intangibles of his game are going to make up for the fact that I don't think Sam Darnold is ever going to stop being an idiot with the football. Like, he throws some awful turnovers.
Yeah, I do think, though, I do agree with you on Darnold, and I want to kind of give you a chance here to kind of lick your wounds, because you're starting to get some sympathy in the comments section. Pierre's saying Steve is my guy, can't agree on everything. Truth to hearts, he's usually pretty straightforward with his takes, and so he's saying Josh still developing. All Steve's saying is there are other QBs better at the position right now as far as techniques. So look, you're starting to get some sympathy in the comments section, I think, with all the people that were been railing on you. Serious question, Judge. Your opinion is your opinion. Doesn't mean I like it, but I respect it. Were you one of the people that wanted Frank Reich to start it over Jim Kelly?
No, I wasn't.
I don't think you were old enough to make it a good enough opinion on that yet.
Yeah, first of all, I was 4. But what I will say is, like, Jim Kelly put it all together. Like, Jim Kelly had his flaws, but he put it all together. And the argument that I'm making against Josh Allen right now is the fact that the touchdown production isn't there. You can say all you want about him running the ball. You can say all you want about him running the ball and scoring touchdowns on the ground. But he threw 20 touchdowns in the National Football League in the year 2020. In a pass happy league, he threw 20 touchdowns. So Jim Kelly didn't have that problem. That motherfucker would throw that ball into some of the tightest windows. He would throw the ball in the end zone, and they would score points. Like that's the difference. If Josh Allen gets more confident in his deep ball this year and fixes the deep ball and corrects the mistakes and utilizes the body control that Stephon Diggs brings, that he's never had a body control receiver like Stephon Diggs in his life, probably anyone even remotely in the iota of Stephon Diggs. If he can utilize all these things to his advantage this season and start connecting on those deep balls and putting the ball in the end zone, and we're getting 7 instead of 3, if we're getting past the 50-yard line and our drives aren't stalling out,
like you just
he's
said,
going to move exponentially up my rankings next offseason.
I mean,
that's a really good point by whoever said that, Sean Munley. We do go into a show with the lead, and you know what? I will say that, but I don't even know if I put that on Brian Daboll. I put that on Sean McDermott. That's a philosophical thing, not a play calling thing. That's the way Sean McDermott is telling Brian Daboll to call the game. So if anything, that's a Sean McDermott knock, not a Brian Daboll knock. Now we get in trouble for knocking Sean McDermott. But
but here's the thing. Like, we're talking about scoring more points. We scored 19.6 points a game last year. We went over this several shows back. If you get that number up to 23 and a half, that puts you top half of the NFL. The Packers were 15th in the NFL in 2019 at 23 and a half points a game. They had the same number of field goals as the Bills. So it was all touchdowns were the difference between that and what the Bills could do. And it was a matter of, like, I forgot what the number was, like 10 or 12 touchdowns made the difference, right? So you're talking about what you said, Josh Allen getting up to that 30-ish touchdowns, maybe 7 or 8 on the ground. And the schedule is tougher. So if the Bills score 23 and a half points a game this year, even though it may not seem like a big jump, that's actually quite a big jump from where they were last year, especially against a tougher schedule.
Yeah, someone with a comment, Chris Janicki. Yeah, the whole premise of today's show was to rank was the scenario of which quarterbacks in the National Football League right now, this offseason, would you take over Josh Allen for the next 10 years? If you had to start a franchise from scratch over the next, knowing you're going to get 10 years out of a quarterback, which quarterback of all the quarterbacks in the world available, according to Jay Spence, I was scouting Cheektowaga middle schoolers, but yeah, the whole scenario today was you got to project it 10 years. So it takes guys like, the Tom Brady's and the Drew Breeses and all those things out of the equation. Yeah, let's unless there's anything else we want to talk about, is there anything we want to open it up to, take some questions or some comments before we wrap this thing up? So if anyone has any questions or comments, maybe we could stay an extra 15 minutes tonight since we went a little long today. You got time, Dave?
Oh yeah, we can stay on for another 10, 15. I think that was we had a good question about the K gun, and here it is from Trek. What do you think Josh Allen could do if he was running the K gun offense from the early 90s? So this comes back to an offensive philosophy question. Up tempo, right? No huddle. I mean, I think that, to be honest with you, I think this would be something that maybe could work for him, a little more up tempo this year, a little bit more no huddle, just because it takes some of the thinking and thinking and sort of maybe some of the bad decision making that pops into your head comes out, and it's more of just getting into the flow of the game. But this is only going to work if he can take that step in kind of making Dayball trust him into running a no huddle offense. And I don't know that, he wants to do that, honestly, because we know how McDermott is. He likes possession. He likes, and that's another point. We don't have the tight end for it, maybe, unless, we'll see what Dawson Knox kind of develops into. But McDermott's a guy that loves possession. He loves controlling the ball. So that's a tough one for me. I don't know. I don't know that there's a good answer for that.
Well, and correct me if I'm mistaken, but isn't another part of the concept of the K gun was not just that it was up tempo, but there was a simplicity to it. Yes. There was only a small number of plays. They would just run those small plays over and over and over again, but they would only run it based on the matchup that was given pre-snap. So you got to trust Josh Allen to be able to read defenses pre-snap. And one of the issues we saw last year, everyone liked to make fun of it, was the fact that Patrick DeMarco was always splitting out wide. He would be in the backfield, then he would split out to wide receiver, and Patrick DeMarco would be out there wide receiver. But, people who are smarter with the X's and O's in football than me were telling me that the reason for that was to help Josh Allen read the defense pre-snap. If certain players followed Patrick DeMarco, they were in man. If certain players dropped back, they were in zone. So it was to help Josh Allen figure out what the defenses were doing. So I like the concept of simplifying things for Josh Allen. Maybe get him thinking less and using those natural abilities more. But at the same time, he's also maybe got to get better pre-snap. If we're splitting Patrick DeMarco out at wide receiver to help the guy read the defense, he's probably got to get a little bit better at reading the defense without Patrick DeMarco in order for us to do that.
Well, and the other aspect of it is like Joe was saying, we really would need a speed tight end for the K gun, right? Because a speed and a taller-ish tight end, and I don't know that we have that on the roster. Like Croft maybe could, but I don't know.
Sweeney's weenies.
Yeah, but he's not the fastest, right? You need a faster guy. So maybe like a Kroom or a Croft could fit that, but is that the guy you want to put on the field? Probably not. So
Koala Bear Khan says, can Ed Oliver be our next Sam Adams? I'm going to say no, just because I believe Ed Oliver is 1/4 the size of Sam Adams. Yeah. Sam Adams was very much a big nose tackle. Big nose tackle. Yeah. And Ed Oliver is a 3-technique defensive tackle, meaning his job is to really rush the passer. Now, that being said, I think that Ed Oliver could have as big of an impact, if not a bigger impact, on the game than Sam Adams did. Sam Adams was a very good player. I believe Ed Oliver's ceiling is about 10 times as high. Because think back to that Dallas game last year. I mean, that dude took over some of those drives, and he kept Dallas from – he was one of the players that really kept Dallas from getting back into that game. He wreaked absolute havoc in that Dallas game, and he really came on late last season. So now that all of the sort of offseason, that arrest is now behind him, and we're pretty much assured that he's not going to be suspended and he can concentrate on football, I don't want to say – I don't want to use the word Aaron Darnold. I don't want to be that guy. But I mean, my goodness, if he could even in stretches, not like take over a game, like Aaron Donald, I think that's asking for a little much. But if he could in stretches of games have Aaron Donald type impacts, look out, because this defense is going to go to a whole nother level with him wreaking havoc up the middle.
This is an interesting one. A lot of people are making comments about DeMarco, right? Whether we keep DeMarco or not. Brett says, I feel DeMarco just doesn't fit the mold anymore. At Wyoming, Josh had Hollister, who was a tight end, played fullback and helped him out. We've kind of talked about this maybe being a role for Tommy Sweeney, or maybe even Gilliam, yeah, where Gilliam could help. And I tend to agree, but I also wonder about what Sean McDermott's going to value from DeMarco from a locker room standpoint in a shortened off season. Is he going to be a guy that he keeps around just because of what he brings into the locker room? I don't think that it's a bad idea if you want to move on from DeMarco, right? So, look, I think Tommy Sweeney or someone else on the roster or Gilliam could fill that role.
Yeah, the thing I'm going to say, and I think I made this comment in the BF fan chat, just like you're talking about a COVID shortened off season. Not to mention, like, I really like Reggie Gilliam, but like this dude is clear cut. Put him on your practice squad, give him some time to develop. Maybe he turns into something. He's got that special teams pop. He can play fullback. He's a little bit more athletic. Kind of reminds me a little bit of like that Michael Robinson mold. But it's just I just can't see it in a COVID shortened off season. I really think that there's still, as much as people don't want it, I think there still is for one more season for that last year of his contract. There's still a place for Patrick DeMarco on this roster for the Bills. As much as fans don't want it, as much as I personally don't want it, as much as you probably don't want it, I just think that's the case. And he was one of the first free agents that Sean McDermott brought in. He's been a team captain. He's a locker room leader. Sean McDermott really respects that out of guys. And I as much as I can't reiterate this enough. As much as I don't want to see it, I can't picture a world where they cut Patrick DeMarco this offseason. I just can't.
Yep. So you mentioned Oliver's not going to likely be facing any kind of discipline, ideally. What do you guys think our DT rotation looks like? Do you think the coaches will use all 5 on game day? And I'm interested to hear your answer here because Chris specifically says all 5.
Yeah.
Do you think that we keep 5? And if so, what do you think that rotation looks like?
My guess is he's considering Quentin Jefferson a defensive tackle. I'm not considering Quentin Jefferson. Honestly, we could say 6 here because I think AJ Epinesa will see time inside as well. I made this comment before. I made it last week. I made it on this podcast before. I don't think the Bills were ever expecting to draft AJ Epinesa. I really think that they signed Quentin Jefferson to be the sort of left end / defensive tackle, rotate back and forth type of guy, fill that Shaq Lawson role behind Trent Murphy. I really think that that's what Quentin Jefferson was brought in to do. It just so happened that another player who's very similar, AJ Epinesa, fell to the Buffalo Bills in the second round. Now, if it wasn't a COVID shortened off season, I would say it's easy. Cut Trent Murphy, make AJ Epinesa your left end, and use Quentin Jefferson the way you'd originally envisioned Quentin Jefferson. But the long way around this is saying I really do think it's going to be a massive rotation. But the one thing I do say about this rotation is I think it'll be Starr next to Ed Oliver. Someone in the comment section, imagine if we could put a Ted Washington next to Ed Oliver. Yes, hell yes. I wish we can get a big fat boy like Pat Williams or Sam Adams or Ted Washington next to Ed Oliver. I'd be happy. I'd be thrilled. I'd be ecstatic. But right now, the only big fat boy we have is Star Lotulelei. So whether we like it or not, he's really their 5 technique. It'll probably be Vernon Butler and Harrison Phillips behind him. Probably more Harrison Phillips. But Harrison Phillips coming off that ACL, I don't think he's going to be a starter. I think you're going to see Harrison Phillips probably get 25, 30, 35% of the rotation and Starr getting 25, 30% of the rotation and then putting in a Quentin Jefferson on those obvious pass rushing downs. So I think it's going to be a lot of Starr and a lot of Harris rotating in with Ed Oliver. The thing I would like to say is I would like to see Vernon Butler subbed in less than Jordan Phillips. I would like to see the Buffalo Bills let Ed Oliver breathe. Don't give him 35% of the rotation. I want to see him get 50, 55. If Ed Oliver blossoms into the player we all think he can be, don't stifle him with the rotation. Don't play him 100%. That's ridiculous. I don't think anyone on the defensive line in the National Football League should be playing 100%. but it should be 50s, 60s as opposed to like the 35% he was getting last year. Let the man, like, he's a peacock. Let him fly, you know? So I'd like to see Vernon Butler less than Jordan Phillips if Ed Oliver does blossom the way we all are expecting. That's the one thing I will say about the rotation.
Was that a Other Guys reference you just dropped?
Yes, it was. One of my favorite movies of all time. One of my favorite. Love the movie.
Top 3 pass rushers inside Oliver, Jefferson, and Epinesa. I think that's probably true. And then throw Addison in the mix too, if you think he can come in and be versatile enough to play inside and out a little bit. It's an interesting group, right? Because you have some versatility there with the entire line. Really, the only guys that you're going to see primarily stay either totally on the outside are going to be Murphy and Hughes, and totally on the inside are going to be probably Starr and Phillips and Butler, right? So the other guys are all going to be able to kind of mix and match, which I like. Snacks Harrison is still available. Cross my fingers that we pull that trigger. Instant run defense upgrade. Probably not best scheme fit, but worth a shot. I mean, you never know, right? He is sitting out there. I think he could slide in there and be a guy that maybe supplants Starr as the one technique next to Oliver. Could be an interesting signing. I mean, there's a lot of guys still out there that I think, Pierre and others have mentioned. Snacks Harrison is an interesting one. Probably wouldn't have to spend too much money either to get him. Yeah,
somebody says here, I like this question from James Parson. If we struggle to put up points, does Dable get the whole season? I would assume so. I can't picture Sean McDermott, Mr. Stability, Mr. Structure, firing a guy midseason. I just don't see that, especially with, like, who are you going to elevate? Ken Dorsey, Chad Hall, Rob Boris. Like, there's just not a lot of there's just not a lot of play calling experience. So if a guy's coming in, like, I just don't see it. But I will say this: I think if the Buffalo Bills average 19.6 points a game again this year, with the schedule we have, we're not making the playoffs as good as our defense is. I think that it's going to be a situation where in the offseason, you're going to see Daboll go and another offensive coordinator come in, and you'll see the Buffalo Bills bring in a veteran quarterback to come in and compete with Josh Allen. I think you'll see a legitimate, like, Chicago Bears style sort of shuffling. I don't think the Bills would give up on Josh Allen unless he throws like 30 picks this year. I think that Josh Allen has secured himself through at least 4 seasons. But if we fall flat in our face on offense this year for whatever reason, average 19 points per game, I think it's going to be Daboll will be gone in the offseason. Josh Allen will get a veteran behind him. That's not Matt Barkley. That's a guy who could start games if Allen falters again in year 4. And then we'd have to hit the reset button in year 5, obviously.
Yeah. There's quite a few comments going on right now because we were talking about the defensive rotation. And Lorenzo Alexander potentially hinting at a comeback depending on how the season's transpiring, and potentially, you don't want to project this, but maybe it's like injury related. The Bills are making a run. Who knows? Do you think realistically that there's a chance Lorenzo does come back this year, given the way that, like, COVID has kind of shortened the workouts and the preseason? Like, Lorenzo's a pro, right? So he's not going to really need probably a ton. He's not going to really need anything, right, to come back. And as long as he's in shape, he can probably come back in and contribute. So do you see this happening?
Yeah. I don't. I know that sounds, I wish it would, but I just, no, I take it back. I do. I mean, screw it. Whatever. I do. Because you think about it, AJ Klein is going to be the run stuffing guy. Mario Addison's going to be the pass rush guy. You're going to see a lot of nickel. I can easily see a situation where Lorenzo Alexander just didn't want the grueling portion of the offseason, the training camp. So if the Buffalo Bills are still in contention late and Sean McDermott doesn't feel like he's throwing a wrench in things, bringing Lorenzo Alexander back, even if it's just as a niche player and a special teams guy, he's an upgrade. So screw it. Why not? Let's do it. Come on, Zoe. Come back around week 10 if we're still in contention, which I think we will be, and hopefully we will be.
So here's a good question from Jay Spence. Steve, when does your Bengals and Cardinals show air?
I said this earlier. My only problem, here's the thing. If I started a Cardinals podcast, I'd be one of 2 Cardinals podcasts. But the only issue with that is I'm pretty sure only 15 people listen to the one Cardinals podcast that is currently in existence. So that is my issue, Jay Spence, really, is the fact that I love the clout and I love the eyeballs, and I need the Twitter follows, and I need the views. I need the clicks. I'm just not going to get that from Cardinals Nation or the wherever the Bengals jungle, whatever you want to call it. I only get that from Bills Mafia.
Yeah. Brett says it's funny
And I
that
am a Bills fan, no matter what anyone here wants to believe.
he is, guys. I promise you. It is funny that the league is Josh is this turnover machine, yet Baker and Darnold have double-digit picks both years and multiple fumbles. Yeah, I mean, like I don't know that there's a ton of people saying that those guys aren't turnover machines. I think the comment is more probably insinuating that there are a lot of people that still believe Mayfield and Darnold are better prospects and quarterbacks than Josh Allen, and a lot of that probably still has to do with, draft status and where they were drafted. Obviously, they're still very early into their careers, so that's still going to hold a little bit of weight in some people's minds until their careers play out a little bit further. But you also have to remember that these same people saying these types of things are also the people that probably had, Darnold and Baker ranked at the top of their quarterback lists in that draft class. So they are going to try to find any way they can to tear Josh down.
And it's I had a take and I kind of blanked on it. But I like that comment there from Christianity. Is there a Cardinals nation more like a district or a protectorate? Yes, exactly my point. Now, my fiance's brother and father are Cardinals season ticket holders. They are diehard Cardinals fans. They are just as into the Cardinals as I am the Buffalo Bills. It exists. Those big fans exist. But there's just not as many. Like it's like honestly, it's insane. The number of people, like there are Cowboys fans across the country, right? There are 49ers fans across the country.
Steelers everywhere.
There's Steelers fans across the country. Yeah. But there are thousands of Bills fans that could literally off the top of their head list all 60, 65 guys on a roster right now. Or that could name 65 of the 85 players on a roster right now. That know who our backup fullback is. That know who our backup punter is. That can have conversations about who's going to be our dime corner this year. If you ask a Cowboys fan who their backup quarterback is, I know they just signed Andy Dalton, but before they signed Andy Dalton, they probably wouldn't be able to tell you. If you asked a Cowboys fan who their gunner on special teams is, they you know what they tell you? What's a gunner? That's what a Cowboys fan would tell you when you asked a Cowboys fan that question. That's why I love Bill Spafia, because we are so freaking invested in this football team, and I would never want to host a podcast for any other team because you can't have conversations like this with all the fan bases. You can't.
No. So this is a comment, and thanks for the super chat here. From Joe. Does this Bills team on the D-line remind you of the 92 Cowboys? Bills have a young triplets too. So, you go back and you look at that, the Cowboys team, they had Ken Norton Jr. on that team. They had the likes of Jim Jeffcoat, right?
Was it Leon Lett? Who's the guy
Leon Lett was on that team. Charles Haley was on that team. So does this Bills team remind you at all of that team? I mean, are Singletary, Allen, and Diggs the equivalent of an Aikman, Smith, and Irvin? I'm not ready to go there yet, but maybe on the defense, I think they're more talking about here.
To speak to the defensive line, I'm going to say no, just because I think that the caliber of players on that Cowboys defensive line was superior. But I get where you're going with, because we had this conversation last week. That defensive line, with the exception of Ed Oliver, I don't think there are any upper echelon studs of the National Football League on that defensive line currently. I mean, maybe someone like AJ Epinesa turns a corner and maybe turns into maybe a bigger prospect than I think he is. But they're so deep with so many above average players like Mario Addison, Jerry Hughes.
Yeah, thanks for reminding me about Tony Tolbert. Forgot about him.
Vernon Butler. Quentin Jeff, the names go on. That defensive line is too deep with National Football League starters. There's 8 National Football League starters on that defensive line, maybe 9. There are guys who are legitimately number one, and we're rotating them in 50-50 as starters. So that's a scary proposition when not only do you have, a really good starting defensive line, you have a really good backup defensive line so they can play less. So when they are on the football field, they don't have to worry about conserving their energy. They can just go ham on that opposing offensive line and not worry that the guy behind them is going to screw it up. So they're going to have to stay on the field longer than they have to. That's what has me most excited about, this Bills defensive line. It's a blue wave, man. It really is. It's a blue wave. It is a blue tidal wave. They're going to come at some teams this year because of how deep they are.
So deep, and they're all talented. right? It's like guys are going to be chomping to get in that game. They're going to be feeding off each other. I can't wait. Cody, our guy, came in late today, but he's got a bomb of a question here.
Yeah.
In our humble opinions, what are the chances the Bills not only make the playoffs but make the AFC Championship or Super Bowl? I can truly see a trip to the Super Bowl 55. I think we're getting close here. We're towards the end of July. I mean, like I think the chances of making the playoffs are high because I think the chances of them winning the division are high. Odds wise, the odds makers have us in New England about neck and neck right now as far as winning the division. So making the playoffs, yeah, I would say that the chances are high. Making the AFC Championship or the Super Bowl, that's another story, right? Like if we get a home playoff game, great. It's likely that we'll play the likes of like a Houston again or a Tennessee or maybe a Chargers, somebody like that. But you're still going to have to either go through Baltimore or through Kansas City to get to the Super Bowl. And you're probably going to have to go through one of those teams to make it to the AFC Championship game. So I'm going to temper my expectations a little bit for this year and say, like, just give me a home playoff game and a home playoff win, and I'll be happy. And anything on top of that is gravy. And if we happen to make a Super Bowl run, great. I'll be the happiest person in the world. But for me, my expectation, I think, is if we can get a home playoff game, and I don't even say home playoff game, if we can get a playoff win, home or away, I don't care. Playoff win, I will consider the season a building block and a success no matter what happens after that.
Yeah, I'm completely with you. We've had this conversation before. The expectation is playoffs. We'll get to that in a second.
No, we can't.
The expectation is playoffs for the Buffalo Bills this year. With the addition of an extra playoff team, the expectation is if you don't make the playoffs, something, either injuries or something went horribly wrong. So the expectation is playoffs for the Buffalo Bills this year. I think having a home playoff game would be sweet, but I don't even need a home playoff game. I just need a playoff win. I just need a playoff. So I'm a little less than you. I don't need a home playoff game. I just need a playoff win.
Yeah, playoff win.
And if it's home or it's away, I don't care as long as it's a W. Because we need to show that we're not – Sean McDermott needs to show he's not Marvin Lewis. He needs to show that when it gets – we're not just going to get to the playoffs every year. We're going to get to the playoffs and do something. Because right now, Sean McDermott as a head coach is 0-2 in the playoffs. He's 0-2. So, he's currently on pace to become Marvin Lewis. And we don't want this team to become the Cincinnati Bengals. We want them to be more than that. We don't want this to be like the Houston Texans or the Cincinnati Bengals that get here every year or every other year and then stall out. We want more than that. So I can easily envision this team getting to the playoffs and having the talent to make a run and making the AFC Championship game and pushing to the Super Bowl. But I don't need it. I just need one win in the playoffs, home or road. So my expectations are a little less than yours. But Joe Smith, speaking of Super Bowl, with a great comment here. Can this fan base handle another Super Bowl loss? Well, what do you think, Dave?
No, we can't. We can't handle it. I already told my friends, my wife, like if we play in the Super Bowl, you're gonna have to lock me in a padded room for 4 hours, and I may or may not come out at the end. Yeah. So I don't know, man. I don't even want to think about that right now. Like I don't think I can handle it though.
We've played in games in my history as a Bills fan. We played in games where like we've been out of playoff contention, but are like driving on the last drive for like a field goal or a touchdown. I'm out of my seat, pacing up and down, and my heart is beating on my chest.
That's a normal regular season game.
Yeah, that's a normal regular season game when we're out of playoff contention. So Ahmet, like I'm willing to wager that I would actually pass out. I've never passed out before in my life. Like I've never fainted. But I'm willing to bet that if the Bills made the Super Bowl, I would faint during the game. I can't even imagine what would happen if we lost. And I think in the short term, we would just been happy to get back there. You know what I'm saying? Because it's been so long. But I think in the long term, that the national media sort of narrative would take its toll on people.
I would not be happy just to get there. I'm going to say that right now. I
wouldn't be either. But I don't think it would kill me. I think that I would have enjoyed the ride up to it. I'd be very angry after, but then as the summer progressed, I'd be like, well, that was at least fun while it lasted. Yeah. Let's do it again. But then in the long term, I think that national media narrative kicks in. We got another question here from Cody.
So Cody, another super chat, thanks. He is going bold here. He's saying no, teams have to come through Buffalo to get there. He's calling it now. Bills and KC fight it out for the number 1 seed, going to happen. And we play the Chiefs this year.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think it's, if I'm not mistaken, it's fairly earlier towards the middle of the season. It's not very late in the season. So that game could be, who knows, that could decide a playoff seed. Bold, we start 6-0. I will say this, if we do by some way get the number 1 seed, that pressure on the Bills then to make it to the Super Bowl will be incredibly high. Because if we get the number 1 seed, it likely means we won like 13 or 14 games.
Here's the one wrench that I would throw into your argument here, Cody. I'm with you. I love the optimism and I love the enthusiasm. I definitely think if Josh Allen takes the next step we're talking about, the Bills have the roster to do it. The only this is not Josh Allen bashing. I am not Mike Lombardi saying that the only weakness on the Buffalo Bills roster is their quarterback. That's not what I'm saying here. But what I'm saying is right now, on paper, outside of the quarterback position, because the quarterback hasn't proven it yet, even though I think he will, we have one of the, if not the best roster in football. So if Josh Allen does take that next step this year, not only do we have the best roster in football, but if we have a top 10, top 5 quarterback, sky is the limit. But here's the one wrench I would throw into your argument, Cody, and that is the Baltimore Ravens, last year's number 1 seed, the team with last year's MVP who brings back most of their roster and have added players like J.K. Dobbins. They do statistically, based on last year's metrics, have the easiest schedule in the National Football League this year.
Yeah, good comment here.
Doesn't that suck? Yeah. So truth to hearts right there. I'm sorry, but Baltimore has a really easy schedule. They might have the same record as last year, if not better. Like me and Alex were having the debate on the Yin Yang pod about what Josh Allen needs to do to be an MVP consideration. And I ended it by saying the number 1 argument against Josh Allen winning the MVP next year or this upcoming season isn't anything that he does. It's the fact that Lamar Jackson, who won it last year, is probably going to cakewalk himself into the same statistical season he did last year, because that schedule looks really easy, at least before the season starts. Yeah,
it does. But I like the optimism. Like we need that, right? We need that optimism. We need to believe a little bit. Trek reviewer, Steve Tasker is the best gunner in Bills history. Who is the second best gunner in team history?
Marcus Easley. I love Marcus Easley. I don't know.
Marcus Easley.
I'm going to say Marcus Easley just because I love Marcus Easley. I love that dude. He was the one guy who I thought was going to be a legit NFL player that just never was able to carve out a career for himself. Injuries really took a toll on his career, but I loved me some Marcus Easley.
He was good. Sam Aiken was a pretty good gunner.
Oh, yeah.
He got that.
Kamar Aiken was pretty good too. Did Kamar Aiken play for the Bills too?
He might have, yeah. Sam Aiken was like that. I mean, he went to UNC, so I was kind of familiar with him anyway. Could this Bills defense be historic this year, says Joe? Possibly. I don't know how much they're going to be able to improve upon statistics from like the last 2 years, though, just given the schedule, right? We do have to play the Chiefs, we play the Niners, we play the Rams. So we play some tough offenses. So historic, you're talking about like 2000 Baltimore Ravens, like 85, like whatever, whatever top defenses you want to talk about. They are going to be really good. But I don't know. I think if we see a top 5 defense from the Bills this year, we should all be pretty happy with that. I don't think we need to put any more pressure on them to do that more than that.
I think the word historic is what trips me up, because I will say this, and without putting too much thought into this take, I think that being historic, sometimes there might be some element of fluke or luck to it, because typically when I think of historic defenses, I think about defenses that score touchdowns and force turnovers and do all these things. And I do think that those sort of big plays and those turnovers, there are some elements of flukiness to it. Like the turnover differential, it seems like is one of the stats that fluctuate the most of any stat in any sport. It seems like one year you could have a plus 20 turnover differential, and the next year you're negative 16. Like there doesn't seem to be an exact science behind forcing turnovers in the National Football League. There does seem to be an element of luck or fluke to it. And I think that this defense has the capability, but I'm not going to say confidently that they're going to maybe have some of the bounces go their way that they would need to maybe jump from being like elite for their year or good for their year to like all-time historic. You know what I'm saying? So But I mean, Nate Asper made a really good point on the NFL Basement, which dropped this morning. You guys really should give it a listen. It was his top 5 reasons why he thinks the Buffalo Bills could win the Super Bowl this year. And his number 3 reason was,
and for those who don't know, Nate is not a Bills fan. He's a Lions fan.
He's a Lions fan. So it's a great perspective. Adam did a great job of probing him and getting an outside fan's perspective. And he said one of the things that excited him the most was the fact that the Buffalo Bills had so many players on the precipice of becoming elite. Tremaine Edmonds, Ed Oliver. Like, these are 2 players who, like, at the snap of a finger could go from very good, promising young players to elite players, like in a split second. Like, and I would put Matt Milano in that category as well. And I would even, I think Trey White's already there. So you have one guy who's already there.
And Stephon Diggs is already there.
Yeah. I'm mostly speaking on the defensive side of the ball.
Oh, defense. Yeah.
And those 3 guys are there who at the snap of a finger could become elite players. Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer, they're not elite players, but they're elite together. They're so good together.
They're an elite tandem is what they are.
And there's so many good other pieces on this defense around all of these guys who are on the precipice of being elite that, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if this turned into a historic defense. It wouldn't. Am I going to predict it? Am I going to say I'm confident it'll happen? No. But if it does, at the end of the season, I'll nod my head and be like, yeah, wow, maybe we should have seen that coming. Mm-hmm. So that's a really good point, Joe.
Good point, Joe. So we're coming up at an hour and a half here, so I think we'll probably wrap it up there, unless there's any last-minute super chats that we want to get to. This was you took a beating tonight, but you made your way through it. I
felt like I rallied after the
you rallied and you got some sympathy too. So that always helps. Sympathy card worked out for you tonight. So doesn't look like we have any more super chats left. Appreciate Joe with a last minute super chat. How beautiful be beating England in the AFC Championship 42. Would it be? Well, that's not going to happen because they're not in the AFC. Oh, I'm thinking Tom Brady. New England is not going to make it to the AFC Championship this year. I'll go out on a limb and say that. But it would be nice. I would say it would be nice. Revenge from all the beatings we've taken from them over the last 20 years. That would be amazing. But might be even more amazing if they just don't make the playoffs. That would be nice too.
And another great comment from Richard to end it. Hyde and Poyer can almost communicate telepathy. They really can. Like, those 2 are so in sync, and it helps the Bills disguise so much. Like, it's just one of the reasons why the Bills defense is so effective is because I think that these 2 guys, the way they move around pre-snap, just gives quarterbacks so much to think about pre-snap that it really does affect the way that they play once the ball is snapped. Josh, thank you I'm actually starting to lose my voice. It's been a while since I think draft day was the last time I talked so much and talked so loudly that I lost my voice. So this was fun. This felt like there's some draft day vibes to this. So I don't know how much of my ego can handle being the most hated guy in the room. So I don't know how often we can do this, but it was fun. It was a lot of fun tonight, guys. We really do appreciate it.
Yeah, and I mean, look, you had your opinion. You got some people that agree with you as far as like, look, you can it's all opinion, right? That's all it is. So, it's good sometimes when the people have different opinion because then you can kind of really get to the root of some of these reasonings. So, appreciate that. Josh says you guys are great. We'll sign off with that. We appreciate that, and we appreciate everyone who tuned in tonight. So, thank you, everyone.
Oh, we have one more announcement before we go.
Oh, that's right.
If this person, I don't have their handle on social media. But Pierre and the Buffalo Fanatics account on Twitter and on Facebook today, I believe, posted out and said, hey, if you guys subscribe to our mailing list, because Buffalo Fanatics is partnered with Patreon on our website. So we are partnered with Patreon. We're going to be starting to create some really cool premium content for you guys. So like things where we invite you guys into Zoom chats and have conversations, and some things where we legitimately make you guys part of the show and you could talk with us and Rico and Pierre and Bobby. Like, we're going to be doing a bunch of cool things in our partnership with Patreon. So head over to the Buffalo Bills website and subscribe to the Buffalo Fanatics emailing list. And the winner, one of the first people to subscribe to the new Buffalo Fanatics Patreon list, is someone with the email of Sam Rios, SAMRAOS 1918 at gmail.com. So if you are in the comment section or watching this right now and your email address is at samrios1918 at gmail.com, expect an email from the man himself, the founder himself, Pierre, within the next day. And you, sir, have won yourself a Buffalo versus everybody t-shirt.
Nice. Love it.
And we're going to end with truth to hearts comment. Where's Rico? Just for old time's sake. For old time's sake. Rico will be back, ladies and gentlemen, tomorrow night with the Rico Report. As always, Friday and Sunday nights. No need to worry. Rico will be back. All right, so until next time, ladies and gentlemen, we really do appreciate it. You guys are the best fans in football. We love our Buffalo fanatics in the comment sections every day. So until next time, Dave, go Bills.
Go Bills.